All right, so let's see. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting us obviously be here at your meeting to discuss a very important topic. I'm Jason. I'm our business relationship manager. So basically, what I do is I'm the kind of, I don't want to say a go-between, but a part of our relationships with our clients. And probably the number one complaint that we hear when someone's coming to us for services is that they don't get good service. And sometimes it's because the techs are on site and they're doing a lot of other things. And so you have me as well as someone that you can talk to. So yeah, today's about defending against cybersecurity threats. And this is kind of a breakdown here of really what we're going to go through. I'm sorry, I'm a mover, so I'll try to speed away. So we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, which we kind of have. We're going to talk about HIPAA security rules. The key with everyone's heard of HIPAA. Where HIPAA relates to this is it's really a good framework for things that we can do that can actually make us more secure from a cybersecurity standpoint. We're going to talk about cyber attacks and ransomware. These are kind of the big things that everybody's talking about these days. They're happening more and more, exponentially more year after year. And we'll talk about cybersecurity insurance. I know there's a lot of questions about that. Do we need it? Why we need it? How protected are we really when and if we have it? How does it help protect you? We'll talk briefly about embezzlement. We know that's everybody here knows that's this industry. People get hit for that quite often. Obviously, sometimes it's used. It happens via computers, and people using computers. So we'll touch on that a little bit today. And then really the types of IT management. Everybody here probably has somebody, whether it's outside organization helping you or someone inside handling your IT. There's a number of different ways to go about that. A number of different ways that we recommend that are more secure for you and that protect you more from a cybersecurity standpoint. And then we'll even talk about some of the average costs, looking nationwide. What are the average expenditures? What do most dental offices spend for IT services and cybersecurity? The main thing for today, too, is that this is really, we want to make sure this is about you. So we don't want to, I learned a long time ago, I've done a lot of public speaking. If you talk at people, it's just after a while, we want to make sure that this is about every one of you. And so please, we're going to ask you some questions, but please, if you have questions, please ask along the way. And I think hopefully that'll help everybody get more out of what we're trying to talk about today. And lastly about us, you kind of heard Adam started the company actually in 2000, and was it May that was the 25th anniversary? April. So in April, we hit our 25th anniversary. We're located in Brighton, Michigan, just off of the downtown, and have been in the Brighton area for those 25 years. We're a security-first focus IT company, and this is really important from a standpoint of we've had IT companies for quite a long time, and cybersecurity kind of started to inch up, and now cybersecurity has become such a big thing. Again, exponentially growing, all the cyber threats, all the cyber breaches, and the vast majority of IT organizations have not caught up and have not made it important. I don't want to say it's not important, but it takes a lot of education, it takes a lot of effort to keep up on everything. So really the vast majority of IT companies who handle IT, they just aren't cybersecurity experts. And we've been handling IT all along, but we've also educated ourselves. It's our expertise, and so we consider ourselves a security first IT company.
And Jason, just for my knowledge, so who in the room knows someone in a dental office that's been hacked or has heard of it happening? Few of us. And again, I really got about 80 phone calls. It was a crazy world. I will say one plug for Jason and Adam, that their people and their processes handle stuff like on a Friday night, over the weekend. Because when people were calling, I'm like, well, who are you working with? It's nice to hear this, over and over again. But And that was one of the big things was, does your IT firm also help you in security, or do they just help you set up your computers?
Yeah, and we get calls that where someone's saying we need more cybersecurity and protection, and the people we've been working with for many years, that's not their expertise. So we need help. And all right, so here we're going to start with a few questions, and this one's kind of asked, who is first who's familiar with ransomware? Raise your hand if you know what happens. Okay, so some of the people. Who knows anyone who's been affected, whether it's you or somebody else? Who's worried they're not prepared for a ransomware attack? Anybody concerned? What's that? Should you be worried? Well, we're definitely gonna get there here shortly. Great question. And really, in doing that, I'm gonna pass this off to Adam. He's our CEO, and he'll let you know.
All right, everybody. First slide here is just an example of some of the incidents that my team has helped customers with. At least in the last 2 years or so. The only one on here that was an actual customer of ours was the top one. It's kind of like an against doctor's advice. They went against our advice and they got popped. But it actually wasn't necessarily a security flaw on their side. It was actually what's called a business email compromise. One of their vendors was hacked. And unfortunately, our client wired money to a bad guy. So the rest of these we were brought in kind of after what we call boom, and I'll go through what that is. But basically after the actual attack, to try to figure out what happened, how can you prevent it. Unfortunately, a lot of these insurance companies didn't pay up. We'll get to that. We have a whole bunch of slides here of how and why that works. As you see here, you can see a lot of these are what's called DEC attacks. So those are business email compromise, which is different than like phishing or any type of viruses coming into your email. This is probably the number one way that you can get attacked by business email compromise is by not having multi-factor like on your 365 accounts. And
365 account.
Sorry?
What's a 365?
A Microsoft 365 account
Oh, okay.
for hosted Exchange and Outlook and things like that. So most of the business email in the world is hosted by either Gmail through Google Workspace or Microsoft and Microsoft 365. There are some other third-party services, but most businesses use one of those two. I want to say 70% comes to mind. What happens here in a business email compromise is, and it can happen both sides. It can happen to you or it can happen to your trading partner. So I'll use the top one here as an example just to kind of paint a picture. So this is a customer of mine. They're in Macomb, and they have a vendor, and they're always doing business with this vendor. And it's usually a decent amount of stuff, a couple $100,000 a month. And they get an email from their vendor saying, "Hey, we had a cybersecurity incident, and due to that, we've changed our bank accounts. So please use this new routing number and this whatever for your exchange." Our customer said, "Oh, no problem. They've been doing business with these guys for 20, 25 years, something like that." They wired out like $190,000. Well, 90 days later, that vendor comes looking for that payable, saying, "Hey, you still owe us $190,000. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" We paid you. And they went through back and forth. Anyway, what ended up happening is the vendor actually got hacked. And a bad guy, a hacker, impersonated that person, got into their mailbox, saw who they emailed with, saw the way that they communicated with people. You know, when you guys write an email, sometimes you're super formal about it. Sometimes you're, "Hey, bud," sometimes you're, "Dear Mr. So-and-so." So they know exactly how they communicate. And they write rules, like an Outlook or in whatever email program that you're using, to mark certain emails as read and move them to subfolders, like RSS feeds folders, a popular example. And then they start sending email out to your trading partners, your customers, your vendors. Ultimately, they're looking to talk somebody into sending money. So the fault on the top one here, I'm not going to go through all this, but the very top one here, the fault was on my client, was they didn't pick up the phone. At the end of the day, your vendor is changing bank accounts. That's weird. They're doing it through email. some of you traded with for 20 years. Pick up the phone and say, hey, Josh, is this really happening? Did you really change your bank accounts? Just want to verify. If they would have done that, they would have saved $190,000. So that's a component that we call the human firewall. So even though our customer didn't get hacked, they didn't verify what was happening and ultimately sent the money out. The vendor actually had to hack, and they had to do a little more deeper dive to get their systems resolved. Onions. Actually, my favorite slide. Why are we talking about onions? So I'm not quite sure how many people here went through full cybersecurity readiness or full HIPAA compliance or any type of look beyond just your risk assessment, which is actually pretty decent. But security is like an onion. It's done in layers. And you can have unlimited amounts of security, but there is a point of diminishing returns, we feel. So on the outside of the onion could be things like email security, anti-phishing, and all the components that go with that, like URL filtering, safe attachments, all that kind of stuff. Inside the onion could be your firewall at your office or at all of your offices, your endpoint security. Whether you have, and this is going to get really nerdy, like EDR, MDR, XDR, ITDR, all the acronyms in place monitoring your systems. So every time
Adam's got more nerdy than I can follow. But good to know.
I'll try not to not too much, but yeah. So the goal is to implement as many layers of security in your practice as possible that make sense. And we're going to get through kind of the left to right of that here in a minute, but that's what I'm going to do. My vendors are prime targets, and I will just give you a little heads up that some of our slides here do have a little bit of tough love in them, so don't hate me. In 25 years, I've been through thousands of offices, dental, manufacturing, you name it. We've been through all the different industries. These are what we're told. When we walk into an office, not just dental, but a lot of small medical practice, you see this role. And these are typically, when we tell a customer, we do an assessment for them and say, which usually follows, by the way, your cybersecurity insurance assessment that your own insurance carriers are giving you. We're doing a very similar assessment, but a little more on the IT side. And when they don't move forward to fix their problems that we've clearly outlined that they have, it's usually because of one of these reasons. They think they're too small to be a target. And I don't want to say that was ever really valid, but that was definitely more valid 20 years ago when only big companies were being hacked. Because hacker groups, it was all manual, right? So you have a hacker, they're not going to bother hacking a 5-user dental company. They're going after the 5,000 user companies, the Microsofts, the Yahoos, things like that. Because that's where all their big money was. And again, it was all manual effort. Today, it's all automated. And every one of us is being hacked just as much as the big companies because it's all being done through AI. It's being done through scripts. They're putting thousands of servers together in a farm and trying to penetrate and find vulnerabilities on thousands of devices every second. Until they find one, then it goes to a human, and then they try to penetrate that. So being a small organization doesn't make you any safer. Outdated systems and poor patching, we see this all the time. This is Windows updates, firewall firmware, copier firmware. There's quite a few things that actually can be introduced to your environment using some of your third-party vendors if those softwares aren't updated. Lack of employee training. Not just security awareness training or what we call SAT training, that is also part of HIPAA, but just proper human firewall training, how to spot, bogus emails, or, you lock the door in your office at night when you go home, you got to do the same thing with our computers. The legitimate managed IT provider, not to be biased, but we kind of know a thing about security. And what we find is that a lot of smaller folks have the cousin, the nephew, the son, the daughter, themselves that kind of handle their IT. They're not trained cybersecurity professionals, and chances are you don't have enough onion layers to protect your organization. Some feel, IT systems monitoring kind of goes hand in hand with that. Part of cybersecurity, a big part of cybersecurity, isn't just backups, and it isn't just stopping ransomware, but it's monitoring when there is an incident. When you have an incident, you don't want an incident or a hacker or any type of bad actor to be in your system for a lengthy period of time because they can do more damage, they can steal more data, they can find other ways to hurt you. So when you're monitoring your systems, and this is internal and external, your email systems, your servers, your EMR companies, if they're cloud-based, they typically monitor that stuff for you that's hosted in their cloud. You have to monitor everything that's hosted in your platforms. Some feel security is inconvenient. So on that first customer slide, I showed the actual, one of those users on there that had a breach didn't have multi-factor enabled. There was a conversation that we've had with them during that entire investigation, and they even fought us on it at the end of it. They didn't want to enable multi-factor because they thought it was inconvenient. It's too hard to type that code in when I want to log into my email. Even after dropping, losing $700,000, they still didn't want to put multi-factor on. So that's a convenience factor, and unfortunately, passwords aren't enough, especially because most people reuse passwords. Does anybody here have a password that you use for work that you've used anywhere else? Amazon, Kroger, right? Yeah, and that information gets leaked not by you necessarily, but by Kroger or TJ Maxx or any other website, and then it's sold on the dark web. We'll talk a little bit about dark web scanning in a little bit here, but that information is sold, and then they use that information to try to log into every platform that exists until they get a hit. And when they get a hit, that's because there's no multi-factor. Then they can breach that service and get whatever you have in there, depending on what it is. And sometimes it's credit cards, sometimes it's data, purchasing habits, you know. Wrongfully feel that they're secure enough. So I'm not quite sure how to keep this one nice, but we're told frequently by folks that basically have no security that we think that we're secure enough, which is fine if you have a small retail shop and you don't really care. There's not a huge risk. But when you're dealing with EPHI or you're dealing with credit card data or any type of sensitive information, it's not a valid answer anymore. Okay. There's proper security that needs to be put in place, and unfortunately, there's just a lot of it out there that isn't being put in place. Professional services, companies like mine, some smaller companies just choose not to have a professional services company help them. They choose to have the break fix guy that's been around for 50 years, or they do it internally, trying to save a buck, which is fine for certain things, but then they don't get the right security in place, and then they have a breach. So this is and there's a million stats out there, by the way. This one here is from the HIPAA Journal. This is just an incident cost range by dental practice size, just to kind of show you. And you'll notice the ranges are ridiculous because it can be from anything to anything, really. So small staff, if you're a practice with one dentist, 5 staff, but you've been in business for a really long time, you have more records on hand. So when you do get breached, you have more data that was breached and it costs you a lot more money. If you're a new startup and you only have a few hundred patients or something, it'll be much smaller. So this is kind of an idea of what a breach can consist of. Not trying to scare tactic here. I'm sure you guys have sat through tons of HIPAA stuff and you understand HIPAA's this thing, and some of us do it, some of us don't, kind of deal. But this is what happens. Second figure slide. So in cybersecurity, we call this boom, and you're either left of boom or right of boom. This actually came from an old military term, for example, like an IED goes off on the side of the road. And before the IED goes off, you're left of boom. You're looking at things, you're doing things, you're walking down the road carefully, but then all of a sudden, boom, something goes boom. Now you're right of boom. You're scraping people off the road, and then you're trying to investigate, how did that happen? How can we stop that from happening again? This has been adopted in cybersecurity practice. So everything on the left of boom is all of our detection, monitoring, password rotations, all the efforts that we're doing to stop a breach from happening. And right of boom means a breach has happened, now what? And right of boom is never fun, but you can back up on the left and you're going to recover on the right. You're going to put a monitoring in place for improper logins or invalid logins to your Microsoft 365 mailbox. On the left side, that's a policy. On the right side, it gets locked. How to get locked, why to get locked, do I just unlock it? Is that good enough? Do I need to worry about why it got locked? What monitoring tool is telling me why it got locked? So that's the right side. And then the investigation side, you always want to know exactly what happened, because something got penetrated somewhere. Either it's a tool that failed or a human that failed, or just something that wasn't in place at all and the attacker was able to get in. So this is really important because we live on both sides of this. So a huge part of what we do is we're trying to put the right tools, the right monitoring, the right services, policies. HIPAA does all this stuff too, your policies and procedures, all that kind of stuff, your administrative safeguards, your technical safeguards, that's all here. But at the end of the day, when something goes boom, can you recover? Does anybody here know or have maybe yourself had a ransomware attack that there was no backups and they couldn't recover the environment. That's the problem. So when you get ransomware, if you didn't know, you don't have to pay ransoms for the most part. If you've got proper backups, you don't pay the ransom. You recover your environment and you move on. I think the reason that people get involved with ransomware and paying their ransoms because they don't have any other choice. They don't have any backups. Their data is just gone. And even though your EMR could be in the cloud, that's still everything else in the practice, right? Depending on how your network is set up. Any questions on Boom, by the way? All right, that was that part. Anybody have any questions so far?
So I know we've got a couple office managers in the room, and so I was my father's office manager for 20 years, and my hat goes off to all office managers because your job is so much harder now than when I had that job 30 years ago. But I got a lot of phone calls from office managers, and that they did have some procedures in place, and I was hearing things like, "Oh, are people saying that they saw the Microsoft scam email where it was your Microsoft Office 360 or has to be updated for your small business? Open this and click on that." And I was sort of surprised that I heard that from like 4 people. And then some people, because of the way their network was set up, if they did click on it, it alerted them, they realized it. But as a former office manager, I went, this is really got to be involving the office managers, the actual users of the computers, and how your network is set up. And it's much more complex than when I was an office manager 30 years ago. And the other conversation we were hearing a lot of was that some people thought it might have been their scheduling software. And that's how this was coming in. And there has been times where some of the dental major providers have been hacked. And usually they're alerting dental offices right away to, close down or make sure you set up your network properly. A couple of things that happened here in Detroit, it wasn't the scheduling software, it was actually the copier software. And that happened to more than one dentist in our community, where it completely froze their office. They got hit with ransomware and they couldn't open or click on anything. But I'll be really interested as you're talking about things going forward, how engaged office managers be working with their dentist and defining their processes or plans.
Absolutely. And we will talk about this a little bit, but one thing that we see a lot of is a lot of administrative safeguards are in place in terms of like HIPAA, but not the technical. Because the technical ones cost money. So we see a lot of folks saying, okay, we're gonna get on this HIPAA training, we have to do it, we need to do it, we're gonna start doing it. It's not a cheap thing, it's not an easy thing, it's not a quick thing, right? So, but what's the lowest hanging fruit? Take an administrative person on staff, you write your P's and P's, you start putting some policies in place, you handle the paperwork side of it, which is elbow grease. So we see a lot of that happening. They make really good strides, they get their handbook together, they start doing some group trainings with their staff, whatever, but then it dies there. They never put, because to do the right technical safeguards, it's really difficult for a small practice to do and manage those themselves, so they need a third party for that. And they usually kind of put the brakes on there and they never finish their compliance. So that means that the users, if they have SET training, it's a very, very light SET training, which is security awareness training. Everybody here go through SET training right now, like an actual annual SET training? That's super important. It's crazy easy to do. It's 20 minutes per employee per year. Required by HIPAA, by the way. You have to do annualized SET training with attestation. Your employees have to issue records in that they did it. But it trains your employees, which are your human firewall. So when they get that email with that link, they look at it and say, yeah, this looks like crap. I'm not going to open this because it looks bogus. Where a lot of people say, oh, this looks really important because it's from Microsoft. I'm going to click the link. So the SAT training really helps train people on how to identify phishing emails and bogus emails. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then sooner or later, it's just second nature. So,
Quick question. Are we talking loud enough for the back? The good volume?
What do you mean by copier software?
So when I'm talking about software, and a loaded question, right? Some software is actually like server-based software, like print server stuff. Some software is firmware, which is a software that's actually like on a ROM module that runs the copier. And I'm not really seeing the firmware itself get hacked or anything. What we see is the copier guy that comes into an environment, plugs his laptop into your environment to do something on your copier for a service call, when he just left some really dirty site and has ransomware or some sort of malware on his laptop. we have customers that actually require that either vendors don't bring their laptops into their environment. They're issued temporary laptops when they get there. That's usually on the larger companies that have the spares to do that, or that their machines have to run through some sort of anti-malware check, a scan basically, to make sure that they're clean. I'm not sure I really agree with that one because it's hard to run a one-off malware scan to say this is a great thing. There might be something under the hood there that could hurt you still. But that's what we see a lot is the copier companies just don't protect their systems good enough, but they're the copier companies. So we let them in, do your thing. We have a managed copier. You pay your monthly payment on it. He's just here to help. And we see those infect more networks than others. As a matter of fact, one of the largest breaches on our list was 500, actually, $7-8 billion company, 500 plus employees. It was a copier guy. So really hard to protect, and that company spends millions in cybersecurity. They just have that one process broken. We're going to kind of fly through HIPAA a little bit here. This isn't really a HIPAA discussion, but it's really important to just kind of show, is anybody here HIPAA compliant? We went through the full HIPAA compliance and done all that. So
Back in the day.
yeah, it came out in 96, right? So it's been here for a beat. But, so the reason that we talk about HIPAA, and by the way, we don't even do HIPAA compliance. We're a component of it, but like you can't hire us, it doesn't make you HIPAA compliant. That's not something we do. We work with your staff, we work with your compliance company, or somebody like the Compliancy Group, if you've ever heard of them. We're the nerds side of that, so we're the ones putting in the monitoring systems and the policies and stuff to handle all the technical safeguards, helping our clients walk through the administrative safeguards. But if you really look at the whole HIPAA framework as it is today, it kind of has all the answers you're looking for in terms of protection from ransomware and protections of things like that. What we find is that most small practices that we at least go into don't have HIPAA implemented at least fully. So they'll do the paperwork side of it, but not the rest of it. So, but that makes you go through a SAT training, which is again security awareness training. And it's broken into these 5 sections. The privacy rule, all fun. We're worried about patient health information and EPHI for electronic patient health information. The second item there, security rule, that's where we live pretty heavily in my group. We're doing a lot of the safeguards, which are kind of fun. And some of these safeguards are simply how you lock your file cabinets for your physical records for your standard PHI. Some of these are email security layers. Again, all the nerdy stuff, the EDRs, the MDRs, the disk encryptions, the multi-factors, all that. Breach notification rule. Everybody needs some sort of breach policy. So if you did get a breach and all of your records were stolen, what do you do? What is your next phone call? What is your next step? What do you have to do by law? What does your insurance company require you to do? All that's kind of part of it. Investigation penalties enforcements are conducted. So that's the enforcement rule. We actually don't do a whole lot with that side of it. And that kind of varies for each individual organization. And the omnibus rule, that was an amendment that came out quite a bit later after HIPAA did, the original HIPAA. And that was, people aren't taking it seriously, especially business associates or what are called BAAs. And so they started putting some teeth into that to make companies like us have some responsibility when our customers get caught. So we can actually we can be named in lawsuits if we're at fault. So the government's hasn't taken the full step with HIPAA yet. They say it's required, but they're not auditing every single company like they did with CMMC, which is for the Department of Defense. But maybe down the road they will. I don't know. It takes a lot of manpower to audit every single medical practice out there, right? All right. 30% of dental practices experienced a HIPAA-related data breach in the past 3 years. Mind you, most of the stats in here are reported stats. If you've had a breach but you didn't call HHS, it's not on here. So these are the ones that actually reported, and it's kind of a big number. 30% is a huge number. And these breaches can be very small. They could be very big. And again, the costs here, you can Google your carts out. You're going to find different costs all over the place. Some of them are just staggering. This one is actually pretty legit. And this is again for firms that got hit with a HIPAA breach, which they had either their insurance company reported or they reported it to HHS. The average cost was $98,000. Again, that's just a fine. That's not the actual cost of them recovering. You have to paying the companies to come in and recover their systems and all that kind of stuff. The healthcare sector accounts for 32% of all recorded data breaches. This is really important. And again, for my business, we deal not just in healthcare, but we deal in manufacturing, we deal in financial, we deal in food, we deal in all sorts of different industries. It's really bad in healthcare, and it's actually worse in dental practices. Dental practices are actually have higher statistics for breach than standard medical practices, such as like an eye care place, which those aren't very great either. And what they find is that most dental practices don't have any security. That's the net of it. They have very, very little security. If you were to go and audit at random 100 dental companies, probably 1 or 2 maybe would pass HIPAA standards. And we're seeing that every day when we go into this. They're crazy stats.
But we expect our computer program that we bought from a certain company, whether it's Patterson or Shine or Dentec or Dentrix or whatever, they have security in that system for us.
100%.
Right. So what are you finding that is not being done in those different groups?
So inside of those systems, if they're like a cloud hosted solution through like those providers, those are typically compliant. It's everything else in your environment that isn't. I just had a conversation with a customer the other day. They're an eye care facility, and they say we don't hold any PHI in the network. I have a tool I run. I show them here's 14,000 records that you have sitting on your network right now. So yes, you do. Here's a log. Front desk people, right? So customers come in. Front desk people grab their medical cards, their licenses, all that kind of stuff. They scan them in and they upload them to the EMR or the practice management system. Cool. Where did it first get scanned in when the person came in? Scanner, which went probably to their downloads folder on their desktop. They never figured that out. But that's PHI sitting there all day long on a workstation. It's not even on an encrypted server. So, and that happens for eternity. And what we also find in a lot of small practices, not this one I was just at because they do have a server, is that some of these small folks don't have Active Directory or a server on site, which means there's nothing really governing how much administrative access that user has on the local machine. So at this point, we're not really talking about the EMR in the cloud. We're talking about on their actual front desk computer. They're a local administrator. So when they're going through their email and they click that link, which detonates malware, which looks at our system, finds all that data, ships up all that data to the bad guys, and then ransomwares your system, that is a full-blown breach. And all because of the front desk computer. So, and if you have big office copiers, like the big Canon or Konica Minoltas, if you've ever been able to walk to a printer and say, oh, I need to reprint that job or anything like that, and those printers have hard drives in them, it's called a RIP. So anytime that you print something from your computer to those printers, it spools on that copier and then prints out your document, but it also saves a cache copy in the actual printer. So those are things that we look at to say, have your Applied Imaging or whoever your copier company disable the RIP or tell the RIP to self-destruct every hour, every minute after every job, and don't cache documents. And that'll help solve some of those kind of problems.
If dental offices are softer or weaker targets, then that means the bad guys are getting through. Mm-hmm. They're closing people down or they're causing problems. And are they getting money?
Oh yeah. Well, and we have a whole thing on the ransomware side of it too, but just a little sneaker on that, because this is the super unfortunate part. Is back in the day, which wasn't too long ago, a couple years ago, if you got ransomware, they usually give you some sort of number to pay, right? Pay us in crypto, in Bitcoin or whatever. Say it's 50 grand. And let's say you get one of these bad guys and you can actually negotiate it down. You negotiate down to 20 grand. Cool. And you pay them the 20 grand. Well, they would give you your decryption key. Now, that decryption key allows you to decrypt your data and get your files back. It was kind of that's how it worked, right? But that's not always how it's working now. People are paying these ransoms. The bad guys are getting their crypto. They're just walking away to the next victim. They're not giving you your encryption keys. They don't have to. They're already breaking the law. It's not like, they're just doing it to be nice. So what we're seeing is that people are actually paying the ransoms. They're still not getting their decryption keys and they're screwed. There's no other way to put it. So that's what happens when you're dealing with criminals. So, did you have a question? Yeah.
Well, I heard that if you pay them, they do give you your record because that's going to be their reputation.
Exactly. Sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes.
They used to give you your codes back, but then some groups stopped doing it. They said it's too much of our time to do it. We're going to go hack new people. So, and that's actually another point I was going to make is what we're seeing is some of our customers becoming a little more serious about cybersecurity, knowing that even if I get popped for ransomware and I pay the fine, but I'm not guaranteed my data, why don't I take what that ransom, that 50,000, whatever, and put it in your cybersecurity? And that's what they're starting to do. Because a lot of folks that we've seen have tried to hedge the difference of what does it cost to do the full HIPAA implementation and stay fully secure. It's not cheap, it's not free, it's a whole new utility bill basically, right? So they're doing that instead. And that way they're staying safe, they're conforming to HIPAA, they're actually fixing a lot of problems with one, instead of hedging maybe I get ransomed the next 10 years and it costs me 50 grand. That's a lot cheaper than paying a few grand a month for eternity for stuff. So, but now that they're not guaranteed the data, that's becoming a big thing. So.
There's a question in the back.
Yes, sir.
You say 30% of dental practices experienced a HIPAA-related data breach in the past 3 years. Are you talking computer-wise or staff-wise?
Not sure honestly with that one. Probably both.
Okay.
Because the staff ones are a lot of times embezzlement related. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm just talking about general violation of HIPAA by opening their big mouths and saying something to another patient that they shouldn't have.
Yeah. Could be higher too.
I actually don't have a specific stat for that. This is mostly electronic.
Remember Chase's staff saying, we talked about that, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as asking, hey, has my mother been in? You can't answer that.
Right.
Right. I think it would be probably a little more bigger than that because these are reported statistics, or at least told statistics. Okay. Let's see here. So tax have increased by 400%. That's true across the board. Cyber attacks have increased by 400% since 2020. That's not just healthcare, that's everywhere. Cyber attacks is it's the number one crime right now because it's the easiest way to get paid. Dental practice increased use targets. Small offices seen as softer targets. We talked about that a little bit.
What do you do to prevent the cyber attacks when you go into an office?
The onion, a lot of layers. So we look at like 50 different controls. We start with email. We start with endpoint. The number one first thing that we do before we even do anything else is backup. So we look at where is all of your data, and we make sure that's backed up. If it's some of it's in the cloud EMR, great, they got you covered. If you have 365, we back up your whole 365 tenant. If there is a server on site, we put an agent on there. Your server's backed up by midnight. Done. So at least that way we know that if you go boom, we can get you back. So that's always my number one priority. Then look at probably email is usually the number one. Every office is a little bit different, but if they don't have a server, then it's usually email because that tells us that the users typically have administrative rights on their machine, which means that if anything does come through, they can fully detonate it, which is a whole different way that we fix. But we put in all the email security. We do the safe link checking. We use a tool called Proofpoint. It's number one in the world for email security. That checks against a lot of different things, and also gives you an archive, lets you send secure email that is HIPAA compliant, all that kind of stuff. So we implement that. It's like $7 a user. It's not crazy expensive stuff, but it's a cost. And then we implement our managed services on the machines, which we start locking machines down. We patch them. This is automated patching. This isn't us clicking buttons all day long on the clock. We implement what's called EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. And some of these tools actually use AI to look for behavioral analysis. Antivirus isn't barely relevant anymore. So the old days of just buying an antivirus program and sticking it on isn't really a thing because those are definition based. Most of the malwares and things that are happening today are happening due to changing. The threats are changing daily. So it's hard to write a record one day and that threat's already changed the next day. So all these tools look at behavior analysis. And we also implement what's called MDR, which is managed detection and response, which leverages some of the telemetry data that we get from the EDR. And this is all under the hood behind the scenes, by the way. We're not logging this stuff in your faces all day long. But these are all tools that are running on your systems, on your servers, The XDR and ITDR is another big one. That's where we'll monitor identities. So like your 365 tenant will, is one of the cheapest tools that we have, but one of my favorites. When somebody gets popped or their mailbox gets popped, which is a lot of time where companies store a lot of data, like in SharePoint, we know about that and we isolate the account within a couple of minutes. So this person doesn't normally log in from this place, from this device, in this way, at this time, all these different things, and we'll break that. So again, every one of those things is a different layer of security, and that's why it's so challenging. But we're trying to trace things like a bad email with a malicious link that would take the user to automatically download a piece of software. Ransomware is just software, by the way. If anybody didn't know, it's literally just a little software package that installs onto your machine and detonates and encrypts things. So that's all we're really talking about here is blocking software. It's just software that you can't quite determine what it is because it's malicious. So long-winded answer, but did that help? Let's see here. All right. HIPAA. Why should it be important? And I don't know if HIPAA is super important to everybody anymore, but we still talk to our customers about it a lot. We can be named in HIPAA suits, so we obviously care about it because we just want our customers to do the right thing. We want to do the right thing. But it came out in 1996. Dental offices are covered entities. We are also an associate entity, so we have to be HIPAA compliant, even though I don't even hold PHI, because we actually can manage and handle your data. That's fun. Protects patient trust. So this is kind of an interesting one because we get into, if you have a breach and you have to report it, your insurance company reports it, an employee reports you, something happens, what your patients can do. That's one of the bigger ones, because now you start losing patients that you built relationships with because you just lost all their data, right? And they want to know why. Financial violations, damage, reputation, patient protection, talk about that. Financial consequences for non-compliance. HIPAA fines start at 127 for record breach. So this is kind of important because in the event of a breach, there can be actual fines from HHS. Like they can fine you for non-compliance. So that's one problem. But then you still have to recover from the breach, which is a whole different cost. Mailing things to the end users that you lost your data to, remediating your own systems, implementing the security controls you should have had, all that kind of stuff costs money. But now you have to do it all right now. That's the other problem, is it's kind of takes over the day, which is no fun. The personal liability for willful neglect, not legal advice, but this is increasing. This is where, let's say that you've had an assessment done and you know you're not HIPAA compliant, you know you don't have any of the things that I just rambled off a few minutes ago in place, and then you do have a breach. Now, you can't be sued under HIPAA itself, so that's a thing. But your customers can sue you for willful neglect. They can sue you because you knew what you needed to do to safeguard their data and you didn't do it. Is it rampant? Is this like something you hear about in the news every single day? No, but there are cases being made for this. And I think this is one of those things where the government isn't auditing every single medical practice. So they're doing stuff like this instead, basically saying, okay, we're going to let these lawsuits happen because we're going to let the public sort this out for us. And that will hopefully let people or make people get HIPAA. This is a little bit more about that. Again, we talked about HIPAAs cannot sue under the HIPAA directly. Invasion of privacy or emotional distress. So again, this is you have a breach and my record gets stolen and I sue you because I'm worried about that. It's my data. And every person is different, right? This could be other things in there like you have to provide, sorry, I can't think of the word right now. Identity protection, things like that. The standard of care. HIPAA can be used as to provide the evidence of the standard of care. So when if you do get sued by somebody, they can cite HIPAA saying you should have had these protections in place because you're a covered entity.
Are you supposed to have encrypted emails then?
If they hold ePHI, yes. If you're emailing sensitive information, they should be encrypted. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that every single message that you have in your mailbox needs to be encrypted. And if you're hosted into something like 365 and in Google, your email technically is encrypted at rest as it sits in the data center. It's once you send an email to a recipient that it leaves that data center, goes to the unprotected public internet, and then lands somewhere else. So if I wanted to send you an email from my email box to yours with my social security number, I can do that. I can do it from that laptop right now. I use the word secure : in the subject line, and then our message pickup gateway, which is called policy-based encryption, sees that email come into our system, says, oh, Adam means to encrypt this. It routes it up to a message gateway, and you receive an email with a link saying, hey, Adam has shared something with you. You got to click that link. It goes to a portal. That sends you a 2-factor code. You type that in, and then you can actually see my security. There's other ways you can do it. If you're a major hospital system, they can actually create what's called connectors from one email server to another and say, you know, we are trusted trading partners. So any email from this domain, from this IP or this block, we're going to trust and encrypt automatically. So there's a few different ways you can do it, but policy-based encryption is the most common.
So all our dental insurance filings that we do, that we send to Delta or whatever insurance company, is that all encrypted?
Can't tell you that without seeing them. Depends what you're sending. Anything that if you ever remortgage your house and you're communicating with your bank, they're sending you emails. You click a link and go to a portal and you can see their email. That's what I'm talking about. That's message pickup gateway. Some banks or providers, you have to go in and log into their system and upload the documents directly and avoid email altogether. They're doing that because a lot of people don't have secure email in place. Because secure email isn't really a standard like inclusion in your mailbox. It's usually an add-on service of some sort. Some of the reasons that how would anybody know if you were HIPAA compliant? Patient complaints, that's one. PHI breach, that's probably the big one. That's kind of the whammy, because if you, that one, the next one actually, if you had a breach and you call your insurance company, say, man, we had the whammy, we're all encrypted, all of our data is gone, we're shut down, we can't schedule, we can't do it. That's kind of a problem. And your insurance company will more than likely require you, I'm not sure if they're required by law, but they will probably require you to report that to HHS.
What's a PHI?
PHI, protected health information.
Okay.
Employer exploit complaint. There's no statistic behind that, but if you're a disgruntled employee, or maybe you work for a firm and they have no security, and you came from another firm that had a lot of security, and you're upset that they didn't have security, and you tried to get it approved to put it in, they didn't, you leave the organization, they can call HHS and have you on it. Missing BAAs. So that's a fun one because, like, again, we're considered a BAA. If we work for you, then we have to sign a BAA for you, because essentially we're not a covered entity, we're a covered entity, but we still have to be secure. And if a customer gets popped and they have a list of vendors, and this is something that we do through the HIPAA compliance, is we put the whole vendor list together and then we send out BAAs. And then if those don't come back, if they don't come back signed by the vendor, in the event of a ransomware attack or any type of breach, those get reported that this vendor got a BAA, so they're a business associate, but they've never signed this thing. That vendor can now get audited to figure out why didn't you sign this thing, and chances are you're probably not following the requirements of the BAA. So basically what I'm saying is that you can essentially get audited because of somebody else that you do business with having an issue. Negative online reviews, including PHI disclosures. So social media, love it or hate it, that's a thing. I called 2 dentists at the beginning of the summer, setting up a new dentist for my daughter. And because she's going to a different school, I want something a little bit closer. And I'm out in the Livingston County area. 2 dentists that I called wanted me to email them my medical card and my social security number. Does anybody here think that's okay? First of all. So I was, in the first one, I was like really thrown off. Being a cybersecurity guy, I was a little floored. But I called the second one, super professional, well-known practice. They asked me to do the same thing. I'm like, am I something wrong with me here? What's going on? Like, nobody emails social numbers. It's horrible to email social numbers. If I was, I'm telling you this, but I'm saving the names of these places, right? I'm not going to be that guy, but some people will, right? Some people have no problem going to Facebook saying, oh my God, don't go to this place. They want you to email their private information, so who knows what they're doing with it afterwards. That stuff happens. I don't know if it's happened to you guys. People like to troll. It's just a thing. I talked about this a little bit, but the reason that we like HIPAA is because in IT, we follow frameworks. So for our Department of Defense customers, we follow things like CMMC, which is a cybersecurity maturity model, or NIST 100-171-R2. Those are the frameworks provided by the federal government that follow NIST standards. This nerdy a little bit, sorry. But those are the actual, you need to have these things in place in order to meet these mandates. HIPAA is literally the framework that the federal government put out for healthcare practices. And so if anybody's curious of what do I need to put in place, what settings do I have to have, HIPAA is still it. It came out in '96. It's still the standard for healthcare practices. Again, kind of ran through this in the beginning, but there's 5 major components to it. I believe there's, between your type of practice, there's 50 to 75 total obligations that are part of this. So that's pretty much it. Some of them are pretty easy to put in. Some of them you already have them put in. You maybe just need to write a document to show and prove that you do. Other things, you actually have to install stuff, change stuff, implement password policies, enforce multi-factor. And again, I'm speaking mostly on the technical side here. There's a whole administrative side too. But it's pretty easy to get started, and you can always get a third party to help, like a compliance group or something.
So Adam, for smaller offices, and I have to admit, I'm not technical. I told him they're technical, and my husband is a control design engineer, and he's got a network in our home that I don't know how to turn on. But for smaller offices, when they talk about some safeguards and things, a lot of people called me and said their front computer, their office manager, or their administrative computer was the one that first recognized the problem or got hit. So when you talk about actual physical safeguards, should the IT companies be working with you on something, within your network or computer by computer? Because it's just, to me, this is a whole new world. And maybe we installed our computer system back in the 90s or early 2000s, and we have maybe been updating Microsoft Office, but we haven't been changing our whole network over again as a small office.
So we look at everything at an environment level. So we look at, walking to the dentist's office, and there's 2 chairs, there's 10, 12 employees, 8 employees, maybe they run lean, whatever. We look at what's there. We look at the machines that are running the x-rays. We look at the front desk computers, the tablets or laptops or desktops that the dentists are using. The back end stuff, yeah. We're looking at the network. We're looking at what's called the physical layer. We're looking at your internet connection, your firewall, your switches, your access points, your Wi-Fi. I went to an office earlier this year, and they had guest Wi-Fi that was wide open, no password, but it was also not segregated from the regular Wi-Fi. From the couch, from my own computer, from that laptop, I could sit there and go, oh, I'm actually in that computer's C drive right now because it had an everyone share on it. Like, just this entire network was just blown wide open. It was really helpful. So,
and again, those are some questions I got. It's gone are the days, I think, where employees are checking their personal email on your work computers. And that'll, back in the day, they're doing it on their phones. But if the employee's using their phone within your private Wi-Fi, not your public Wi-Fi, can that cause a problem?
it can. If you have enough protections in place, there's a few ways that we handle that. First, we typically recommend an employee network, or what we call an IoT network. So this is you have the business computers, you have the guests for your actual, clients that are coming in. Then we have an IoT network. The IoT network is going to take your thermostats and your smart TVs and all those types of devices that need to connect to Wi-Fi. We're going to put those on their own network. And in that network, we program it to where they can't talk to each other and they can't talk to anything else. They can talk to the internet, and that's it. So if that TV got hacked or malwared or whatever, it doesn't affect anything else. Employees, we like to recommend that they either go on that network or they have their own network. And as long as you have business-grade Wi-Fi, carving out a new network costs nothing. You can have 30 networks in your office if you want off the same access point. It's a configuration change.
Are you guys doing that?
So it's a failure. It's a failure at configuration to ask those questions. So we usually set up 4 to 5 Wi-Fi networks every time that we do a Wi-Fi overhaul.
And can you talk too about, there are all the computers, I'm trying to relate to your question too a bit, the office manager, all the different computers, Viperspace in a sense, us being on each computer monitoring, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, again in layers, and we don't monitor alone. We have SOC, or what's called the Security Operations Center, that also helps look over some of the stuff that we do or that you guys are doing or that's happening on your machines. So going back to your original question about the front desk computer kind of ties to that, right? So we monitor things at a device level. We also monitor things at like a directory or an identity level. So if you've ever had a server in your office, you've had the control delete to log into your computer and type in your password, and it makes you reset your password, then you have a directory service somewhere, typically in your office. And that directory service basically is called a domain. And a domain will have computers, as in all the computers in your environment and all the users in your environment. And then you'll have enabled users, disabled users, things like that. So when you have a domain, it makes it a lot easier because we can control permissions. So when we talk about monitoring, when Marcy logs into that front desk computer, she is a domain user. She can use the things that are on that machine. She cannot install things on that machine. If you're not on a domain, then you're probably logging in with admin, owner, the owner of the business's first name, because that's what you typed in when you first set up the computer when it came out of the box. We see that all the time. But the first user to log into a computer on a non-domain environment is an administrator on the machine. So that's one problem we try to solve. Either it's putting in a server or connecting those to 365 Entra ID, which is a cloud version of that, which is included in your business premium licensing for anybody who has 365. But then there's, again, the onion layers, right? So we'll install the EDR and we're monitoring for events there. We'll install ITDR, we're monitoring for events in the cloud. So we're monitoring all the devices and all the users, but all simultaneously. And then we're also patching all those at the same time as well. Every single day we're patching systems. So if Microsoft launches a patch, if Adobe releases a patch, we're putting those in immediately so you're not running vulnerable software, because most of the reasons that you get those patches is that they found a vulnerability inside the software and they've released a fix, and that's a patch. So
like if there, let's say, simplifying, there's 20 computers and we're monitoring it and something happens on one and we see that, what, can you kind of talk about that?
So in that situation, we're isolating the machine. So that's called device isolation. So our EDR and our MDR will work together and say, something bad's happening here. They clicked something, they targeted all these 45 different services, and then try to detonate this thing. This thing is known to be a malware or has malware-like characteristics. We're going to isolate the machine. And isolating the machine means that it can't talk to anything else on the network. It can't talk to the internet. It can talk to us, and that's it. So we can come in and take a look at the machine, remediate the problem, and then put it back in production. So that's an advanced technology that only typically MSPs have. Or enterprise companies like the University of Michigan can do that. Large hospital systems have that in place. It's not something the users typically know about unless they've experienced it.
So your average dental office wouldn't have that?
Not unless they have an MSP with a security package.
Or an MSP. So,
Does anyone have that? And I laugh because I can get an alert to my phone if the thermostat goes out of whack or the water heater suddenly spikes or goes too low. But I get nothing to my phone if suddenly my computer's been hacked. So.
Yeah, it's
kind of like, if you have boom on one computer and you have all these other systems on other computers, the idea is to try to keep the boom away from everything else, right? So
anytime that there's an incident of any kind.
Dr. Patel's office, her office manager, I think they had it because if their first computer got it and it stopped.
Yep, then they did, probably.
Yeah. We're fully cloud-based. You're fully cloud-based, and so that's why the one computer got it and everything else stopped. It didn't go to, they don't know, it didn't go to all the other computers.
Yeah, if their domain, like Entra ID domain joined and they had ITDR and EDR enabled, and like maybe Microsoft Defender Plan 2 that has some advanced characteristics to it as well, and that means that your PC is also domain joined in the cloud and part of Intune, Microsoft Intune. So all that kind of stuff works together and says, something's going on in this machine, and Intune sends a BRIC command because Intune also handles your encryption keys. So if it's a full cloud environment, it could have been that did it, or that type of environment with layered on additional cybersecurity products, because Microsoft isn't all things security. It does have a decent stack, but usually had a lot.
I will say that I have noticed we still are getting a little bit of glitches because we log in by our own personal email. I can pull my phone out right now and log into our software and call a patient or text a patient. But I went to post a payment, which we use Clover, and I do it right on my computer. My credit card number popped up, and I had never paid for anything in that computer. So I didn't know because it was in my Google Wallet though.
It's tied in that way.
Oh,
Which is kind of was scary on my end. I'm like, why? That is my credit card number.
And in Clover's, it's just a payment gateway, right? So it could be part of your personal profile as well. Is it the same email address? Do you have a personal version of that, or
The personal email is
Personal
my
email.
Gmail.
Gmail? Okay. Yeah, a lot of times you'll have a work email, then a personal email, and you'll have your personal card tied to one and your work one tied to the other. But the ability to log into some of those services with your work email is called single sign-on. So that's where, like in Microsoft 365, or if you have Google Workspace, you can tie those identity services into other services. So like from half of my security tools, I actually log into those using my 365 login because that's where it's all authenticating. So the cool part about single sign-on is that if I log into your Microsoft suite as your admin, because you just fired somebody, right-click disable, they're disabled everywhere, not just that one portal. So we don't have to log into 45 different portals and block them out of everything because it's all single sign-on. So there's besides convenience, there's a really good security reason to do that. It's just a ton of setup, and it's not guaranteed that everything that you use will support it, but the world's going there really quick.
Toby just brought up a good thing, and again, I'm still wearing my office manager hat. So I am that old. Back in the day, Michigan State University had you use your personal social security number as your student ID. I mean, that was yeah, it was punch cards. It was a long time ago.
That's why HIPAA exists. The government's like, come on, we gotta do something. You're gonna have to stand here.
But I think about onboard. Do they still?
Yeah, some,
No.
yeah, they're going away from it, but there's still some that you have to
Okay,
be.
now I feel younger.
Some banks still do that.
Yeah.
No.
Older bank accounts.
But I think about I was onboarding a new employee, and I would sit down and go, okay, we need to pick your login, and often people would pick a personal email because they knew it. Like so that kind of like, it may seem like simple things and stuff, but is there any guidance because working with a company, they're going to do the hardware, they're going to do software and things I don't understand. When it comes to common sense stuff that I don't know, is there guidance for that? Like, should we, as office managers, be doing some common sense things? Like, I made up a rule for the staff that said only I can open any email that has to do with software updates, utilities, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want anyone else in the staff opening those emails because I was going to be the one that was going to pause and say, well, that doesn't look right. Or, and that was just a common sense rule.
Yeah.
But that kind of guidance, stuff I don't know. There's so much I don't know.
So short answer is yes.
So people should not use a personal email for a login. That's
Definitely not. Always keep those separate for a lot of reasons, especially with all the synchronization that's going on today. So you don't want personal stuff syncing to work stuff. If you think like OneDrive or anything like that, that's not a fan of OneDrive.
I'm not a fan of OneDrive.
It's hard until you get to understand like exactly where is my data and who has access to it, because it's not always in your face and super obvious. So. But yeah, so we try to hit everything with at least two layers of attack, right? In that situation, that would be your policy. I'm writing a policy, it's going to the handbook, we're adding it to our orientation. You're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z as users of my system. We love administrative stuff, that's great. But we're also going to make it to where even if they did, they're not going to be able to run that. They click that link, our application controls blocking it because it's not on their allowed list, or they don't have the admin rights. Actually, nobody in the office has admin rights. If they need something done, they put in a ticket, we do it. So it's that level of different types of control on the policy side and on the actual technical side. Any other questions?
Not really a question, but a comment. My history is U of M migraine clinic, and it was way back in the day where we went paperless. So I've had all the training, but as an office manager, when you're busy, you don't always get that pause moment.
Yeah.
So to have that backup is huge for us.
Yeah.
Because we're scared to death now. I'm like, you open the email, you open it.
And it's getting harder and harder, especially with email, because they're looking more real, right? And your phishing emails before were kind of obvious, broken English, things like that. Now they sound completely legitimate. They're even putting in proper SPF and DKIM records to make the domains look legitimate now. It's not just all spoofing. There's a lot of things that they're doing because that's where they're paying off at. This is where they're breaching people and getting money. And again, not just in the business side, just people. They're getting a lot of bucks out of just people. Quick slide on notifications. This is for a HIPAA breach. Of course, you need to notify the patients. I guess the rule is within 60 days. If you have a breach of more than 500 records, you have to notify HHS. And you also have to notify the media. That's a scary one to me. When you get a call in the news and say, I got breached. Yeah. This is where you hear the big medical systems and you hear about their HIPAA violations. It's because they have to report it.
An oral surgeon could easily get 500 patients.
Right? Mm-hmm. Been in business for not that many years that you can have 500 records. They don't have to be active patients either. That's the kicker. A lot of people think these are active. They look at their current client base, and it's not always it. It's how many total records you have. So it could be a patient you had 10 years ago. If you still have their EPHI, you're still responsible for it. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's relevant, right? So, yeah, the media one is the one scares me the most. I wouldn't want my name on the news. Right. Any other questions on HIPAA? Yeah, we can point you guys in the right direction to like the compliancy group or other HIPAA resources if you want to get started with HIPAA. We're not a HIPAA company. We do pieces of it, but not all of it.
The MDA is holding a course this month or next month on HIPAA, and you can get your own HIPAA book if you go to the course. So look on the MDA CE webpage.
I'll put that in the follow-up email. I'll work with you on that. Okay.
Cyber attacks and ransomware. We've already talked about a lot of this stuff, so I'm gonna go quickly. Phishing are emails, messages that are there to trick you into thinking that something is legitimate, so you click on it. They're also there for you. For example, you get an email from like Chase Bank. It says it's from Chase Bank or from Microsoft. And you click on the link, it takes you to a web page that looks like it's Chase Bank. It looks familiar to you. You've been there before. You put in your Chase Bank credentials. The website you just visited is actually malicious. The bad guys now have your Chink-based credentials, and they're going to go log in as you, assuming you don't have multi-factor enabled. Put multi-factor everywhere. And they're going to start moving money around or spending money on your cards. Phishing is also, by the way, the number one delivery method for ransomware is phishing. You get phished, you click on something, and then you download a piece of ransomware, which is a very small file usually. And if you have admin rights on your desktop and you open up that attachment because it says invoice.pdf, you're right about it. You just want to use that data. Ransomware, we talk about ransomware quite a bit, but again, it's just a simple mechanism, software piece that encrypts all data on your machine, sends the encryption codes to the bad guy. They can unlock your data, you cannot. They host you ransom by putting text files on your machine. So when you go to open up any file on your computer, all it is, hey, you've been ransomed, send X amount of dollars to this Bitcoin wallet address by this day, or we're deleting your keys and your data's gone forever. That's the kind of the end of ransomware. There's a ton of different variants of ransomware. Some are file-based, some are system-based, some attack the kernel of your operating system. Kind of a point that was mentioned earlier is the front desk computer getting hacked. What about the rest of the computers? That's called lateral movement. Ransomware will always detonate and then try to move through the network and detonate on other machines. And that's a super important.
When I was in practice, we backed up the system every night.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you have your own, but we had to do it on
tape or something? Or?
Yeah. Or then it went up to the cloud. If you have it up there, how can they have a hold of your records if you have backup?
A couple ways. They can still get a hold of your records that are on your machine. That doesn't mean that they affected your backups. And there's a term for this called immutable backups. So anytime that we're putting backups in place, we do a couple things. First, we follow a 3-2-1 strategy. We want 3 copies of your data in 2 separate locations, and one of those being offsite. So that prevents you from a ransomware attack, a system failure, device failure, building burnt down, whatever. You're covered from somewhere. Now, one thing that we do find a lot is backups that are on site. Either it's a cheap NAS drive from Best Buy, or some cheap online service where we're backing our stuff up. But those backup services aren't always what's called immutable. Immutable means that your data cannot be changed. So that laptop right there has a backup on it. Every day that backs up behind the scenes, whether I like it or not, just does its thing. And everything that's backing up is stored in our immutable backup storage, which means if that gets ransomware, they can't ransomware my backups. If it's on site, like on a NAS drive, that could get ransomware if it was unprotected, and that ransomware would spread through the network. And one thing they want to do is they want to also ransomware your backups. So now you're like, oh, well, we've got a backup system. We just paid $100 for it. It's brick too. So we're all about backing up and backing offsite to a proper backup provider.
One thing I'd like to add too is I think, so recently my mortgage company, there was a breach. So first email I get from them is there was a breach. So they're letting me know. So I'm thinking, and everybody else thinking, can I trust my mortgage company? What they have, did they get my social security number? Did they, what information now is potentially out there? And the next email I got a while later was a class action lawsuit. So of course the attorneys found out maybe one of the people was an attorney who got, and then now they're getting class action lawsuited by everybody. And now that's all the more on their reputation and everything. So a lot of this is certainly about your information and being able to protect your information, but you're also protecting, there's a really bad stat coming up that here in a little bit, not to be part of the fear thing, but reputation and your future business is, to me, my opinion, is the most important part. But
and again, just to share some of the phone calls I'm getting, one about the staff accidentally doing something. I don't know how many of you have your office manager or your staff doing things like your Facebook social media post, or maybe you have a newsletter for patients or things like that. And so, and I'm sure you read every email that the Michigan Dental Association or the Detroit District sends to you. But one was a staff member was looking for cute, dentally kind of Facebook images. You know, oh, I saw this on Facebook, and they just kind of copied or loaded it down. They could use it again. So they just loaded it directly from a wherever they saw it, or a Google search or a Facebook. That got them, because they were downloading something that they thought was just copying a cute image. One of the things that we do is we do send out images to members for social media, but we've got them on our website, so they're being scanned. We've already made sure that they're copyrighted. You know, we know that that's there. And so that was an accidental staff thing. They thought they were just making a cute newsletter and downloading an image, but where they got the image from wasn't a place that was known. They just, randomly found it. And I didn't realize that malware, is that what it's called, could be hidden behind an image.
Mhm.
I thought if something was an image, it was only the black and white coding for an image. But
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be an EXE file or an MSI file. It's just anything that can be executed, I guess, is the best way to put it. And with autoplay, like you stick in a USB drive and your computer pops up, hey, what do you want to do with this? That can execute ransomware right there, by the way. A side note, and it's not in this presentation, but if you ever find a USB stick laying around on the floor in your office, don't plug it in your computer. That is a form of a hack. They actually bake those with ransomware, and they leave those around. It's not a honey pot, I can't remember the name of it, but the whole point is if you grab that photo, oh my God, 2 terabyte SanDisk, heck yeah, and you go plug it in, and it breaks your system. So don't play. Or put them on a loss of file in case somebody legitimately lost it. Just don't plug it in your computer. All right, and insider threats. Yeah, and I want to emphasize the accidentally on there, and because humans are humans, right? And if you don't have all the protections in place to restrict and stop them from doing things, they can accidentally do things. This doesn't have to be malicious. This could be a complete accident, a whoopsie. I've done this before. It looks legit, whatever the case may be. So don't beat them up too bad, but SAT training only teaches people so much. And again, things look pretty legit nowadays with phishing emails. So that's where you really need the layers of security in there that are filtering a lot of this stuff out and not leaving it all to your people. Ransomware in dental offices. We talked a lot about ransomware. We talked about what it encrypts. Yeah, newer trend shows even when ransomware is paid, the encryption keys are not always provided. That's a big thing. That's a scary thing. And by the way, more of the reason that probably the first thing I would recommend everybody do here is check backups. Make sure your backups are in place, covering all of your data, and that they're immutable. Call your IT guy. Make sure that they're immutable. If they're not immutable, if they're done on site, they're basically useless in terms of it. Sometimes threatens publicly release sensitive patient data. This is another important thing because this is a lot of people were putting backup systems in, and then they were getting ransomware and saying, "Well, we don't care. We'll just recover from backups. We're not going to pay this." This is another thing that they try to do to either get more money out of you. I've heard cases of a second run, like as in you've already paid them, but then they want more money for another reason because they say, well, we still have your data, so we're going to release it. So that's something, I haven't been personally involved in this, but we're hearing this out in the cybersecurity space right now, that they're threatening to take the data that they encrypted and release that publicly if you don't give them one, which is really difficult to combat against, especially when you put protections in place, right? So another reason not to be ransomware to do that. A little bit about this, white dental offices are so vulnerable. Small to medium-sized dental offices lack dedicated IT staff or an MSP providing advanced cybersecurity tools. Patient value is high value. And by the way, the patient health information that they're pulling, especially if they're getting a social number with that, that's enough information to take out a loan. This isn't about them knowing what ailment somebody has. It's about the information that they need to go do financial harm or get financial gain. That's the carrot at the end of the rainbow. All this stuff is money. Many practices store backups online without strong encryption or immutability, which talked about that. That's another thing.
And when you see small office, again, my father was a one-shop dentist, and maybe 2 associates. IT staff isn't one of our current employees. IT staff is a separate company. So we don't need someone on staff.
No, in the medical space, I think if you gotta look at what do we pay in the company versus what does a full-time competent IT person cost, right? And that's still only one dude versus a whole army of people. So it's not apples to apples, but there is a point in normal, without healthcare requirements, without the full cybersecurity stack having to be installed, when you get around 150 users, that starts to make some sense. In medical, it's a lot less. It's like 50 because you have to have so many different layers. Your cost per user is a lot higher, so you have fewer staff, higher cost.
So we're like a 3-office dental group.
So if you're like a three user office or 3 separate offices.
3 separate physical offices.
Yeah, it's good to have smart hands for something like that, as in a guy that knows some technical stuff. But if it's still 10 users per office, it's probably cheaper to have your IT company just provide that little bit of support on site. Because the biggest problem with that, and I used to be an IT guy. I was a network engineer for a company, and then I started Viperspace back in 2000. So I've been on both sides of the fence there. But when you're a one-man band, working for a company, you're only one skill set. When you're on vacation, there's 0 IT people, right? So, and no matter what, no matter who's pushing the buttons and monitoring the things, you still have to have the tools in place. Like 80% of our cost of our services is tools that I pay vendors for. It's all the cybersecurity tools. There's a massive stack of them. So if you hire an IT guy, you can't just say, oh, great, we have an IT guy, we are now secure. No, that guy still needs all these tools. And he's only buying it for one shop. So he's buying 30 users worth of something, not 2,000 like I am. So those tools would be much more expensive for him. And for those reasons, it usually makes MSP still cheaper, still the cheapest option.
And you said in the very beginning, IT security is becoming like a utility. You
Yeah.
pay your electric bill, you pay your water bill, you pay your supplies.
The same reason cybersecurity,
Yeah.
the same reason cybersecurity insurance is a thing today that wasn't much of a thing 20 years ago. It's almost a whole new market. We became an MSP back in 2007, like before it was even cool. We started looking at everything saying, when our customers call us, it's because, oh no, this server won't boot up. And we'd go on site and fix it. Send them a bill, see in 6 months or a month or whatever the next thing is. And we said, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to be proactive. We want to stop these from happening. We want to make sure that we're not always reacting to boom. We want to start keeping people left of boom. So.
Yeah, the MSP is managed service provider. So as opposed to being only an IT company who comes in when things are broken, we're involved. Our slogan is, we are your IT department. That's really what we do. So instead of you having to hire and spend the time and the money and who knows how long they'll be there, you can hire a managed service provider that is your IT department, which is much more efficient and cost effective typically.
Like our staff, we've got level 1, level 2 technicians, level 3 technicians, cybersecurity engineers, network engineers. So you and they're shared across all of our clients. So we have 3 user customers. They have access to all my people. So one guy's helping doing troubleshooting on, I can't print tickets from the front desk. The other guy's in the firewall looking at firewall logs. So we're able to take our whole team and share it with all of our clients. And that's what an MSP is. It's kind of like a crowdsourced technology company. That makes sense. Pretty much covered all of these. How are we on time, by the way?
28 or till 9, is that right?
Yeah.
Good.
We're falling asleep. It's pretty nerdy stuff here, sorry.
Can you talk about more like practical stuff on how we can go and use this in our offices now, or what we have to call to get the security that we need?
Yeah, and again, it depends on who your provider is. Do you have like who here has an actual IT company? Someone do they monitor your stuff? Or do you call them when something blows up and they come and fix it? Or do they call you and say, hey, there's a problem with your system? Let me fix
They
it?
monitor like our firewall and do all our updates, stuff like that, but they're not constantly monitoring behind the scenes. But they do like re-up our 365, make sure all of our computers are, updated and where they're supposed to be. And then I call them when I'm broken, but mostly it's me.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yes, sir.
So mine monitors, I believe they monitor, because I know one time I was having a problem with my Dexys, and all of a sudden the guy went in and did whatever from Dexys, and then all my x-rays are gone. So then I called back Dexys and said, hey, what happened to my x-rays? So the guy that took care of it said, oh, I think you have a virus. So I called my IT guy and I said, hey, I was just told I have a virus. So all he said to me was, there's no way you have a virus, because if you had a virus, I would already know about it.
That means probably that he at least has endpoint protection in your network.
I have absolutely no idea what he has,
But all your x-rays were gone.
no, the guy deleted it by accident.
He's trying to blame it on, he's trying to tell you got a bug when he actually wiped it out on accident or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that what ended up happening was that, but my IT, what surprised me is my IT guy said, there's no, well, he added another word in the middle. He said, there's no way that you have a virus, I would already know about it. So he's got something that he monitors with my system. all the
Do
time.
you pay a monthly fee? That's a good way of knowing if you have
Yeah, I
an issue.
pay him a monthly fee.
Okay.
And we have a slide that we'll talk about with that, because there's MSPs, there's just IT companies that are break fix, there's MSPs that are security first MSPs, and then there's in-house IT like U of M, or all the big hospitals have an army of IT people. But the short answer to that is, first of all, you have to have an IT guy, your IT company, whoever that is. And I mean, if you want to do it I don't know how you can do it internally for cybersecurity. If you understood every word of my mouth tonight, then you can probably do it. If you didn't, then you probably can't do it.
White flag.
So, it's find an IT company in your area, give us a buzz, whatever it is. Call your current IT guy and say, hey, what are we doing for security? Are we, use HIPAA, even if you don't fully go through it. I mean, officially I got to tell you to do that, but at least use that as your framework. It's telling you need to have these things to be secure. So give that to our IT guy and say, what will it take for us to do this?
Just for my own curiosity, is anyone an iCore customer? No one in the room is using iCore? Right. They're one of the dental, they're out of Texas though. They're one of the dental firms that talk about IT.
Gotcha.
But they don't cover some of the things you've been talking about tonight. So
Yeah.
they're more the hardware and the firewalls, the network, but not some of the security. Staying to the left of the boom.
Yeah, it can be it can be daunting, guys. This is not an easy stuff to understand. It's a lot of layers. It gets nerdy. It's hard to say you need to do all this stuff and you can't do it yourself. You have to go hire somebody to do it. Sometimes there's just realities of things. In your EMR, you can talk to them. Actually not on here, but let's talk about least privilege access real quick. And what that is, and actually we do touch on it maybe in the announcement side, but least privilege access is something that you can take care of today. If you have anybody that in your system that you hire somebody, or your boss hired somebody, or you're the boss and you hire somebody, you can just give them admin in your EMR system. You get admin, you're my admins, I'm gonna go fix teeth, you guys just handle stuff. As soon as everybody has admins, they now have keys to the kingdom. There's no checks and balances anymore. They can write their own checks, they can approve their own checks, they can make their own deposits, they can skim their own deposits. They can do whatever they want maliciously or accidentally, and they've got the full admin God authority to do it. And we find that all too often because it's easy. It's easy to hire somebody and say, you're an admin in the system because most of your job will be done in this software doing that or doing that. Not what access do you need? We're going to create a custom role for you that opens up the doors to those specific areas and whatever software it is. And then you apply that role to that user. And then the user over here may have similar roles, but maybe a little bit different. The rule of thumb is that no single user in your company, maybe the owner, but other than that, no single user in your company should be able to start and finish financial process by themselves. If you cut a check or you have the authority to voucher and cut a check, you should not be a signatory on that check, or you have to have dual sign checks, which is not an IT. This is in your software, how you run your practice kind of thing. It's just good practice this person cuts checks, this person signs the checks. This person vouchers a credit card bill, this person reads the credit card bill and approves it so it can be paid. Always have a check and balance every practice. And yes, technology is involved with that because you're using computers, but it doesn't mean that you have to buy software to do that. A lot of times this is just misconfiguration, and giving admin access to everybody, or all the access, not the least privileged access, is considered a misconfiguration. Even I'm sick of talking about HIPAA. We talked about a lot of these email cybersecurity threats, phishing. We talked about ransomware. We talked about credential stuffing, dark web. We did touch on that. This is your information that is essentially caught in breaches. So when companies do have breaches, those breaches are always sold in the dark web. The dark web is where hackers buy their data. So if I was to, what's around here? Red Lobster's across the street. So I go and I hack Red Lobster and I pull 20 million of their records of credit cards and everything else. I've got your name, I've got your credit card number, I've got all that. Sweet, awesome score. I sell that on the dark web. Or medical records. Those are actually worth a lot more because they have a lot more information.
So that's how my credit card ended up buying something at Home Depot in Florida.
Yeah, and it's so rampant. That's why the Consumer Protection Act actually exists, which makes you not responsible for certain purchases without verified signature. On the medical side, it's a little different because you don't always know where the data came from. But for the breaches, that goes to the dark web and it's sold. Like credit card, like a Visa's, it's also like $2 or $3, and Amex sells for like $7 or $8. Medical records, I don't know, they sell for a lot more, and it depends on how much of the record they get. When there's a breach, they don't always get everything. They may just have first name, last name, and address. They may not, it may be your group ID, but they don't have your social number and your phone number or whatever, right? So there's partial records. The dark web is really important because, again, that's where they buy this data and they figure out what they want to do to exploit you with it. Either it's hacking your credit card and going on a shopping spree, or either it's taking out fake loans in your name. That's another big thing. The banks are trying to keep up and put protections on their side for these kind of things. So they don't let them happen, but they can only protect so much as well, especially with all the e-banking and online banking that we have now. The dark web's really important stuff, and also passwords. So anytime something gets hacked, and I just got one not too long ago, I think from LinkedIn, and it stated something about hey, we had a breach, blah blah blah, and it got X, Y, and Z information. And it was actually on my dark web monitoring report. The only thing I said, it got my name and my email address. I'm like, who doesn't have my name and email address? So whatever. Breach could have been worse, but LinkedIn doesn't have that much bad information on me or much personal information, so whatever. If it was a different source, if it was Trinity Health Systems, that'd be different, right? There'd be a lot more information there.
Just a comment
Yes,
about loans and stuff like that. So back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, you could lock your credit and they give you a 6-digit number.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to keep that 6-digit number because it was a very important 6-digit number. But now you can do it on the phone without a 6-digit number. So I'm beginning to think anybody can lock and unlock my credit.
I hear there is still some legitimate services for that.
I don't know. All I know is that I did contact them and I locked my credit. And every time I release a car, I find out what it is and I have to call and do it. But it's not as protected as it was when they gave me the 6-digit number, because I had to enter the 6-digit number. And obviously, everybody must have been losing their 6-digit number.
Or they're running it down on a sticky note, sticking it on the wall at the office, and everybody's got your 6-digit number, right?
There was a dental office that called with banking, in that somehow some thief set up a separate credit card processing portal.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not in their office. I mean, their office to credit cards and all that. They set up a separate portal to their business bank account, and they were running some credit cards through it. So like money was coming into their account. Then all of a sudden they got to do a big takeout, like a big, I guess, refund or reverse charge to that credit card. But luckily that particular office, and they have a good office manager, like was really looking at their banking records and going, wait a minute, what was this, money out, money in, and then they figured out, hey, we don't have that credit card processing portal. It doesn't come back to our daily records. It's not anything that we're doing. No one still knows how that happened. How did they set that up, and how did they get it past the bank?
Sometimes it's a different bank, actually. Sometimes they're actually setting up fake portals that look a lot like your payment portal, and then they're actually routing it to, sometimes it's a legit portal that's routed to a real bank account just owned by a bad guy.
Mhm.
And then they start sending in fake invoices out to your clients, and your clients click the link to pay, they go to that portal, looks like your portal, they pay, that guy gets the money, you don't get the money. You don't know anything's going wrong until you actually reach out to your patient saying you're overdue. And they're like, I paid you. So similar to the ACH side of things, larger transactions, but it's kind of the same thing. Credential subject there, business email compromise, talk about the unpatched software, patch everything all the time, everywhere.
And that's a full-time job.
We automate it. There's thousands of patches out there.
That's what an MSP does for you too, so yeah.
And if anybody really wants to nerd out, I'm sure you don't, but if you really want to nerd out, the hardcore patches that are released for large vulnerabilities from like Microsoft's and Adobe's and all the big companies out there, the federal government actually creates what's called the CVE. It's a common vulnerability executable or something like that. It's an actual number that will identify that specific vulnerability, and then the patch. So if Microsoft releases KB 206439 and that happens to be a patch for a certain CVE, those are listed on the federal government's website. The other cool thing is that most compliances that require you to monitor and patch things and identify vulnerabilities, called vulnerability monitoring, those will actually show you which CVEs are in violation. And CVEs are graded from like 1 to 9, 9 being the worst, by the way. Misconfigured cloud services. Again, this could be sharing, inappropriate sharing things in OneDrive. I mentioned OneDrive earlier. If you had a practice folder and you just shared it to the world, that's a misconfiguration. MFA, not configured or enforced. Number one, that right there is the number one thing besides backups that you can do today. Enforce MFA everywhere. It's free. It's already included in whatever your package you have. Your EMR probably already requires that.
What's MFA?
Multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
So that's the code you get on your phone, or you have to use the Google Authenticator. Those are all forms of multi-factor. Username and password isn't enough. Anybody who has Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, those are the really big ones. There's not a whole lot of other ones that people use. AOL is kind of dead, I didn't realize. So, but even AOL requires MFA. But make sure you're enabling MFAs. It's free. It's the cheapest thing you can do. Take a little bit of inconvenience. And even if somebody gets your password, it makes it a lot harder for them to break into your account because there's that multi-factor.
Is there some way that you can prevent your staff from using your computer to go on their email?
Using their work computer to go on their personal email?
Yeah.
We block the personal email. So in part of our content control policy in your environment, we'd say, no, Hotmail, you're out, Yahoo, you're out, Gmail, you're out. We're blocking access to those web portals altogether, or we're blocking those on your internal network on corporate-owned devices, but they're allowed to do it on the employee guest Wi-Fi because we don't really care what happens on that. It's VLAN off on its own thing. So there's a few ways you can do that. Usually I just prefer to block them, especially in medical environments. If you are not a Gmail customer or you're not running internally for your business, and we just block access to the portal. There's no reason for anybody to go on your network. So that's again have a policy that states employees can't check personal email on company devices, but then we put the big stick in that says we're going to block you from doing it if you try.
That's how we got that.
Social engineering kind of ties in a little bit with phishing. This is where people will use information about you they find online or elsewhere to try to cultivate some sort of attack against you. It's becoming more popular, and it's also they're using AI to help collect that data, which is always fun. Network device config and or vulnerabilities. This is where we talk about bad firmware. And this is like if your IT guy gave you a firewall, sold you a firewall in 2014 and has never renewed it. License is probably expired. The software on it's really old, probably hasn't been updated. There's probably a known vulnerability. Hackers can use that to exploit and get into your networks and steal your data.
How much would you charge to come in and inspect somebody's computer system and make sure it's up to date?
We usually do it for free. To an extent, we look and see what you have in place. We don't go through patch level stuff if all the basics aren't already there, and we don't spend the time to do it because there's no point. There's lower hanging fruit first, right?
How often are you supposed to change, like update your firewall?
Depends. So updating the firmware in your firewall is as available from the manufacturer. Updating the license on your firewall, typically, most firewalls come with either a 1 or 3 year license, and then you can renew those until end of life. So like we're a WatchGuard shop, so we do mostly WatchGuards. We've worked with SonicWall, Cisco, Meraki, all those ones. And ours is actually hardware as a service. So when we sell a firewall, it just goes as part of your monthly subscription, and it sits in place until it goes end of life. Then we come up with a new firewall and swap it and move the configuration over. Other firewalls that are more perpetual, where you write a big check, you buy it, that comes with a 1 or 3 year license, and then your provider should be letting you know every 1 or 3 years to renew it. You pay the fee, and they give you a new license. They install it, and you should.
Just checking to see if he's doing his job.
Yeah, well, if you're getting that bill every 1 to 3 years, they are. If not, then I'd question it. If it's over 3 years and you haven't got that bill, chances are whatever firewall you have in place is already expired. And all firewalls worth their salt have an expiring license on them. Pretty cheap ones, Best Buy ones, those are kind of lifetime things, but they're not really good licenses. They're good stateful firewalls.
And so many of us are working from home, like everything's at work, but we're at home, we get that call, we can log into the system from our home computer to the work network. So should our home computer have its own firewall system, or is that protection enough because we're logging into the system?
It's definitely not protection enough, because usually the logging into the system is done through a VPN or a virtual private network, which all that really is running a long network cable between your computer and your corporate office via the internet and saying, hook me up to my network. If your computer is vulnerable or has issues with it at home, that stuff can filter up through the network, and that's no fun. So we do not like what's called BYOD, or bring your own device. It's a big hip thing. Everybody says, bring your own iPad, bring your own laptop, whatever, and just sign in. There's certain ways that can be effective with companies that deploy fully hosted solutions, because you're basically just doing a session, like a screen session. With any type of VPN, you always want to have a company-owned and managed device. So we would actually recommend that you'd have a company-owned laptop to connect into your company network, which does increase costs for the network. I get that, but that's the best way to secure it.
Well, if you're having your patients sign in on an iPad, it should be your iPad.
No, not
Your
necessarily.
office iPad.
Two things that depends on what they're signing. There's an app if they're not using an iPad, so it depends on where the app's hosted and how it's talking. If it's just an app that talks to a cloud service, that iPad should be on your information, your IoT network, which doesn't talk to anything else. And it doesn't matter if it's encrypted or anything, because they're not really doing anything besides signing in, right? I'm assuming you mean like an EMR sign in or something. Okay. AI, first question there. Just more of a stat, but AI is being very heavily used in phishing. We talked about that a little bit. I think that number is low. The 20 or the 82%. I think it's over 90% now. Almost every email that comes out has some sort of AI in it. Anybody not know what AI is? Malicious phishing emails are up almost 1,300%, 100%, and that's because that's where they're getting success. They're phishing people. People are clicking links. They're getting money, so they're doing it more. Credential phishing attacks are up 967%. I think that number's gonna be up a lot more this year too. And what that is when you actually get a phishing email, you click the link. So that is, I received it and I clicked it, so it failed the human firewall, and it takes you to that page and it asks you for your credentials, and you type it in. That's called a credential phish. They now have your password. You just literally gave it to bad guys. So that's all SAT training, by the way. Proper SAT training systems do phishing campaigns. So.
Are we only going to get the virus if we actually open up the link in it, or just opening up the email itself?
Some can be deployed through a preview. So if you're like not throwing Microsoft under the bus and saying that's this thing, but if you click on an attachment, it shows you like the message preview. Right. There's technically, depending on the bug, depending on how your systems are protected, that can actually detonate a bug.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say just because of time and knowing what some of the main questions were, I think we should jump to the cybersecurity insurance right now.
Sure.
Oh, Here we are. Here it is. Okay.
You want to do this one?
Yeah, sure. Actually, what,
I can jump in. You have questions for me?
I don't know if this is too personal, but I don't have to raise your hands, but just not by nod, do some people have cyber security insurance?
No, we do not.
Okay, this is,
What if we don't know?
if you don't know, yeah. Well, it's, we've all heard about it, right? It's become a bigger item. This is really, we'll start here with this. Only 26% of cyber insurance claims were paid in 2024. That's a low number. So why is that? The real crux of this, two things with cybersecurity insurance. A lot of people think that it's included in their business owner's policy. It either isn't at all, or it's this little thing to make it look like it's in there. So it's typically a standalone policy. And here's why the percentage of you pay all this money for cybersecurity insurance and you don't get paid when it happens is exclusions is one. So if what they're expecting is insurance companies are obviously they're trying to make money, and if we and they don't want to insure you, it'd be kind of like you have fire insurance on your building, let's say. And but yet you have a flamethrower making hot dogs at lunch. Like they would exclude, they want certain protections in place. So they want to make sure that you are doing A, B, C, and D to protect yourself from an attack, or they're not going to pay the claim. Right. So two areas again where that happens. One is raise your hand if you even have it. Have you read the exclusions? It's important to read the exclusions in there. Sometimes you sign saying, okay, I have X amount of coverage, I'm good. And then, but exclusions say if you don't have cybersecurity X, Y, and Z, we're not going to pay the claim. Another thing that happens is they'll sometimes have you fill out a survey and sign for it, or you've done some kind of cybersecurity audit of some form, and people will just sign it. Or insurance agents will say, oh, this is good, and then send it in. And then guess what? You have a big claim. Insurance companies don't like paying big claims, so they're going to say, okay, show us that you had A, B, C, and D in place. And if you didn't, then they're going to exclude it. That's why this 26% number is so low. There was a question earlier today, should we have it? I can't give you legal advice or anything like that. I'm of the opinion that everybody should have it these days at this point. But it's crucial that you are working with, you have a good insurance agent that's good. You can ask these questions. What are the things we have to have in place? And one of the things that we do and we do for clients is they come to us and they say, okay, these are the exclusions in the policy, or these are the requirements, or can you make sure do we check all these boxes? So if we have a claim, we're not going to get, we're going to get paid if we have a claim. And so that's something that we do for a lot of our clients too, is just help them make sure that they're going to get paid if they have a claim. And in some cases, just even if you can get it in the first place, there are strict requirements. Okay, so I kind of went fast and furious on that. Are any questions on that on cybersecurity insurance?
So it's easier to understand fire insurance.
Yeah.
But in terms of shopping for cybersecurity insurance, is it something we should shop around or compare for? Are there ways to evaluate, what the policy is and what it's covering? Any kind of guidance in that area? Because I think a lot of dentists don't have it.
Yeah, and so I'll let you in on a secret. I used to own an insurance marketing company for all businesses that I sold back in 2016. Two things. One, you want to make sure first you have an agent that is adept at this, because it's new enough. To to be adept at it, they're going to have had to have spent the time to really understand it. Another thing you can do is, again, you can come to us or someone like us that will take a look at the exclusion verbiage, whatever requirements, and you really want to ask. This is really important. What does the insurance company require that we have in place so that we actually get paid on the claim? And everybody has my card too, and this goes across the board from an IT perspective. If anybody wants to just call us, no cost, call us, ask questions. Hey, so I'm talking to my agent and they're saying this, or could you take a look at the requirements to have it in place? What would you need from us? Or I mean, if we have to get really involved, then obviously you're becoming maybe a client. But if you just have questions along the way, or you want some basic assessments of things, just call us on that. Yeah.
How much insurance do you get? 50,000, 100,000, 200,000? I mean, what should you be looking for?
So great question. It's for you to decide. When I was in the insurance world, it wasn't appropriate for me legally to say, you'd probably be okay with this amount. You know what I mean? So when we look at some of these numbers, actually we're not going to have time for the public embezzlement, so I want to respect your time.
Don't worry, embezzlement isn't even a cybersecurity thing. We just know it's really important to dental firms, so we included some of what we said.
So I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone here with your CE. And just to let you know, the Michigan Dental Association does do some things which are called endorsed services, meaning there's a committee at the MBA at the state level that's reviewed certain vendors. Now those vendors pay a marketing fee, but they're endorsements. So we're not saying they're better than every other vendor in the world, but they do recommend something called Coalition Active Insurance for cyber insurance. And I'll give them credit where credit's due. And I'm looking at the webpage. At least they mention some of these, what Jason just said. And so they talk about, do you have a cyber policy? Do you have staff training, things like that. So I'll enclose that just for your awareness of what the MDA talks about for cyber insurance, but it's only one company that they're referencing. They don't give you a list of companies to check.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, what was your name, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, so your question that you had, when we saw some numbers up here as far as what, I think an average of one of the costs was about $100,000. It's all across the board. It's really hard to say how much you should have, but an agent should be able to give you a quote based on what you can say is, tell me what it costs for 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. They're happy to quote all those numbers for you.
But does it have anything to do with how big your business is?
Yeah,
So if you have a $2 million business,
the risk is higher because you're going to have a lot more records.
right?
You're going to have a lot more risk.
Well, it can tie into your breach costs. So if you've got a HIPAA breach and you're sitting on $500,000 between fines and notifications and remediation, you want to insure for somewhere around there. And then you also make sure that you're covered for the amount of loss of business use and things like that too. Like we carry $2 million of cyber insurance at Viperspace, but that's because we also handle other people's, so we have more risk on that side.
Okay, and I know we're, again, respectful of your time. I think we have you guys are up at 9, right? So some real quick things, and I won't go through all of these unless anyone has questions maybe at the end. But these are the average expenditures. This is nationally for what people spend, dental offices spend for IT/cybersecurity, depending on size.
That's based on shares and total staff. And it's important to understand that these are kind of your run rates. This is like the new utility bill, right? In terms of this is assuming you've already put in your cyber stuff and whatnot.
And there's such a big range. There are a lot of dental offices spending legitimate money for IT and cybersecurity. That's one thing I wanted to get across today. This slide, a lot of time to go through on this, but you can see that people are spending legitimate dollars on this. And, you know, really with this, it's, I mean, we sell IT, so of course I'm biased. I think you should spend on the higher end because we believe in it. We see it every day. We see the issues. We see where people and businesses are harmed. But a lot of people are just, I was talking to somebody at the show, and they were saying, he's like, I'm, you know, embarrassed to say that we're not really doing anything. But don't be embarrassed if you're not there yet. It's true about anything in life. You know, things change. We get things are rapidly changing with cybersecurity. We can't get started going in the right direction until we get started and going in the right direction. It's okay if we're not there right now, but the question is when can we potentially get started? And, you know, our goal today is obviously to provide education, but whether it's through us or anybody else, you know, we really highly recommend that you know, if you haven't started yet really looking at this as a serious issue, you know, we recommend that you please do.
You ever hold classes where you have people bring their laptops in and say, teach me how to make sure I'm secure in my laptop or anything like that? Or is that
really done anything.
We used, back in the day, we used to do some of that for like our senior center and some of those kind of things. It always came down to, I forgot my password at home on a sticky note, so we just stopped doing it.
what if we got a group together when we say we all want to make sure that we're secure and we're doing business, you know, whatever? Is that something you'd be interested in helping us with or anything like that?
We could talk about it, but it's more on an individual basis.
Okay.
Because you know, everyone here has a slightly different environment. Y'all probably have the major building blocks, but they could be done differently. So, I'm sorry. What works for one person's, you know, internal network may be a little bit different for somebody else's. So,
before I open up to final questions, I think we're at 9 now. Again, this is what we do. If we can ever be of help, again, if you just have some questions or whatever, don't worry about that. I'm happy to hear from you. I did put some cards out on the table. I have more cards. But here's contact information. You're someone who likes to leave, you know, reviews, and you feel like you got something great out of this, and you like to leave reviews. Here's our. You can scan our code here. Any final questions? We're good for as long as you want. I'm just trying to be respectful that I know that you were scheduled to be here till 9. Are there any questions people still have?